Hi, my name is Caleb D. Wilson. I believe that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah according to Jewish standards. And today, I am excited to announce that I'm going to be starting a new series, and it's called Messianic Monday. And what we're going to do is essentially an educational, sort of lighthearted, but heavily Jesus being Jewish focused series where we cover a range of topics. We'll talk about a couple of things. We'll be reacting to things. We might even have some guests in the future. And so, if you are excited to be part of this, I would like to encourage you to please hit that subscribe button. I do put out a lot of content to try to educate people about the Jewishness of Jesus. So, any subscription really helps. All right. So, the first thing I want to react to is this conglomerate of quote religious founders. And I thought this would be really interesting to look into because already I have a lot of problems with it. And so number one is going to be obvious about Jesus and does he fit within Christianity? But before we even go into that, I want to focus on what it says who founded Judaism. It says Abraham is the founder. I have a lot of problems with this because number one, Abraham is the one who receives the covenants. It is actually Hashem, God himself, who actually brings the covenants and makes a covenant with Abraham and not vice versa. So it's pretty misleading. I'm not saying the person was intending to be misleading, but you can see that there's some confusion when we attribute that Abraham is the founder of Judaism. And also the other issue too is that Judaism is predicated on the text, which is the Torah, the Bible. Some people might refer to it as the Old Testament. I don't call it the Old Testament. The Hebrew might be Tanakh. And so we have Moses' writings, and that is the essence of Judaism. That's when a lot of things are codified. Now, it's not to say that Abraham didn't have any structure to operate by, because there were the Noahide laws that were passed down from Noah's time, and that was given to the nations that predates Israel. And what happens is pretty much the Noahide laws come into place in Torah. It's codified into Torah. Does Jesus fit into Christianity? Is Jesus even the founder? Is Jesus the founder of Christianity? Well, the question is, does Jesus start something new? And if he started something new, you would see elements of Jesus disassociating with the system of Judaism, principles, laws. And well, we don't see that. First of all, Jesus says, "I have not come to abolish the law, but I've come to fulfill it." It does not mean he has come to complete it. Really easy way to show this. Take the meaning that Gentiles that Christianity puts in, that fulfilled means that he has accomplished everything, that he's completed everything. We would then translate that verse to say, I have not come to abolish the law, but I've come to complete the law, to fulfill it, to abolish it. Abolish means to come to an end, which is another way to say complete. Either Jesus is completely crazy, saying nonsensical things, or we are misunderstanding and implementing our own interpretation of the word fulfilled. When he's in the temple as a child, he says, "Don't you know I'm about my Father's business?" to his parents. And what he is referring to is that at the age of 12, that was about the time that children in Jewish culture, particularly boys, of course, become men. That's when they usually go to work. Most of the time, a lot of these kids wanted to become rabbis, to study in the temple. And what happened is that most of the time, about 99% of the time, these kids were told, you should go into your father's business. And so you can see this really cool, I love this, by the way, this is really cool allegory that Jesus at the age of 12 is making, saying, I am going to go to my father's business. Don't you know I'm about my father's business? And what is he saying? He's found at the temple with the Pharisees, with the scribes, learning Torah. So right then and there, and I could go on and on, and I just wanted to kind of give a quick glimpse over this topic. Just give you guys some things to think about. There's a lot of things that don't make sense if Jesus is here to disassociate from Torah, to disassociate with the Jewish people. Hi guys, I just wanted to talk to you real quick about this book, Jesus in Context, Why a Jewish Jesus Matters to Christian Believers. It's written by my friends, Rabbi Darren Katz and Paul Edwards. This book has totally transformed my understanding of who Jesus really was from his own culture, from his own people. It will cover a range of topics such as, was discipleship a new fad? Was Jesus disassociating from Judaism? Did he have a bar mitzvah? A lot of things that doesn't strike from a Christian perspective as Jewish, but if you buy this book, it will give you a light into the things that Jesus did. And so I'm going to have a description below that's going to give you a link to buy this book. I would highly recommend, if you want to learn more about the authentic and real Jesus, highly recommend you buy this book. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let's get back to what we're doing. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to react to this video, which is made by Mark Driscoll.
So when you're looking at government and politicians and policies and systems, the proclivity can often be to get rid of it because we think we can do better. But here's the big idea. Change isn't always good. Jesus has a principle, I'll call it the principle of 7 demons in Matthew 12. The principle therein is this: if you cast out a demon, you better replace with the Holy Spirit, otherwise you get 7 more demons, which is different but not better. And so at the end of the day, if you're going to remove a leader, do you have a better leader? If you're going to overturn the system, do you have a better system? I'll give you an example. There was a man named Saddam Hussein. Here's a picture of him. He ruled in Iraq up until 2003. Iraq is today the same geographic location as ancient Babylon. Babylon in the days of Daniel was ruled by King Nebuchadnezzar. He erected a giant statue of himself so that everyone could worship him as both king and God. He was a counterfeit of Christ. Saddam Hussein thought he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, ruling and reigning in Babylon or Baghdad. So he thought, since there was a giant statue made of Nebuchadnezzar, he would do the same. He should have read the whole book. It didn't end well for Nebuchadnezzar. He should have read the whole thing. And so he was worshipped as the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. And what happened is we removed him from leadership, and he was a diabolical, demonic man. I'm not going to defend him in any regard. But once we removed him, the power vacuum was filled by a group called ISIS, jihadist terrorists. New government, but not better. The old one was bad, the new one is worse. At the time that Saddam Hussein ruled and reigned in Baghdad, there were 1.5 million Christians living in Iraq. It was actually one of the most secure states in the Middle East for Christians. He didn't love us, but he sort of accommodated us. As soon as he was toppled and ISIS took over, they began persecuting and executing Christians. Today, that number has gone from 1.5 million to 150,000 Christians in country. 90% of God's people have either died or fled the country. So the point is, when we're dealing with government, you need to understand that when there is a power vacuum, demonic powers, principalities, and spirits rush in because the war in heaven always plays itself out on earth. When there is an opening and opportunity, Satan, who sought to rule and reign in the kingdom of God and was cast down here, he tries to fill the void and vacuum at every opportunity. This happens in government, politics, education, entertainment, economics. There is no place that he doesn't want to rule and reign.
There's a couple things I want to touch on. I'm just going to briefly mention this. I won't go into this whole topic of the dispensationalism, the idea of supersessionism, that he said that the Christians are now God's people because they're not God's people from the way that they interpret it. It's the Jews are the people that are still chosen. But I thought this will be really interesting for a couple of reasons for me to react to it, because I thought I could show you what's going on in my mind as a Messianic Gentile reacting to Christian content. And you also can see what I really think about Christians. And I thought that that might be really important for you to see. I'm not going to suggest that I absolutely know what Mark Driscoll is trying to insinuate by some of the things that he's saying. I just want to bring up that when I had first watched this video, there was something that just bothered me. And so I thought I could explain maybe something that I saw, and maybe I didn't see it the way that it was supposed to be. Maybe the way that was presented bothered me. But I thought I could explain to you what went on in my mind. So first of all, this is about Saddam Hussein, who was the ruling person in Iraq for a couple decades. And he points out he's a diabolical man. He's a demonic man. Absolutely correct. I thought I would show you just how I feel about Christians by comparing it to my love for Jews and what goes on in my mind as far as am I fair? Am I biased towards Jews so much so I'm blowing it out of proportion to fairness, right? So I thought I would explain to you. So what if we took Saddam Hussein? And instead of him protecting these Christians, which I haven't done the research, I'm just gonna assume it's correct. I have no reason to doubt that he's not misrepresenting the truth. It sounds like Christians might have been surviving better, surviving, I could say, at least in this period of time that Saddam Hussein was in power. What if Saddam Hussein? What if we flip the script and that was Jews? Okay, so let's say that there's this person that comes up to me and says, "Hey, Saddam Hussein, awful person, not a very good person. Before Saddam was taken out of power, there were Jews that were surviving in Iraq, and it seemed like they were surviving. They were thriving, and they were totally fine. And then once Saddam Hussein came out of power, then the Jews were started to be attacked, killed, you name it." My thought would be, Saddam Hussein doesn't get brownie points just because he doesn't kill Jews. Saddam Hussein doesn't get brownie points because there were Jews surviving. If he's abusing and terrorizing his own people and killing them. in doing the awful things he did to other countries. Why? Why do I say that? Because first of all, you have to understand the Jewish perspective, and that's part of what I thought would be really interesting is bringing the Jewish perspective because the Jewish perspective about their own self, about their own Jewish ability to even thrive, is Jews are not special, not in the way that you think. Jews are not better than anybody else. They know this. Them being called a holy people never meant that they were better. It simply meant they had a job to do. And so the Jewish perspective of what is happening in the world is that at the Tower of Babel, when the generations fell, when they all split apart and abandoned God, God was calling to many people. And it was Abraham who received the call. And then Abraham was blessed by God, and he was said that through him all the nations will be blessed, and through him all the nations would be cursed. The Jewish perspective of why the Jews even exist is that the Jews are here to help bring the lost nations, the nations that rebelled against God, bring them back to him. Okay, so why is that important? Because these people are made in God's image. Every single Jew, Gentile, they're made in God's image. They are important to him. And so the reason why I explain that mission is because it's not Jew-centric. I mean, it's a Jewish perspective, but the idea is that the Jews are here to bring the nations back to the God of Israel, the God that their forefathers abandoned. So you can already hear that this Jewish perspective is that it's not the Jews are just in their own world, at least it's not what it's supposed to be, in their own world, just being enlightened spiritually because they're so high and mighty and much better than everyone else. There's a redemption process that was already in place, already set up by God once the forefathers of all the Gentile nations abandoned him. So when I hear Saddam Hussein didn't kill Christians, but he still abused his own people, he's still an evil, diabolical man, I'm like, eh, that's that's awful. I don't care who you're killing. If you're killing somebody, it is anti-Torah, it is anti-God. I hope you understand that. It's anti God's ways. So forget the Jew and Gentile thing. Stop killing people because it's not God's way. And so that's why I think that was what bothered me. And then let me get to the second point that I wanted to make. I think this is actually probably is going to explain what bothered me. Okay, so I understand his point. You take Saddam out. I understand the point. Like we should put a better person in there, and it didn't happen. Clearly, it's not happening. I mean, let's look at Iraq today. It's not. It's not. It's not happening. I think what I didn't hear, and maybe this is what frustrated me. What I didn't hear from Mark was How does he not know that Saddam was just the foundation that these other leaders after him would just build on? If you look at it from that way, Saddam is really actually the influence of why the Ba'athists and ISIS became the way they were. They just took it to an extreme more level, and it makes sense, right? Because Christianity adopts some elements of Judaism. And you're already being anti-Torah by abusing your own people and killing your own people. Why not be more anti-Torah? Why not push that envelope? And humans love to push the envelope. So I think that's what frustrated me now when I think about it. Now I feel like I can articulate it better. I felt like it was just like maybe it was just because he was uneducated. Maybe it was the way it was presented. I didn't hear that. And I think that's what frustrated me. I was waiting for him to acknowledge that he was the source of that. In fact, I've read the Gulag Archipelago, at least part of the first one. And in the Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn mentions that it was really the whole Soviet system starts with Lenin, not Stalin. Lenin is the catapult to what Stalin became. There's a podcast, I think it's called the Jocko Underground podcast, and it's Jocko Willink, who had spent a lot of time as a SEAL team commander in Iraq. And it's really fascinating. I'll let him be the one to tell you about it. But what he describes is that the Ba'athist party that becomes ISIS. Well, that's what I was trying to say. I've said it weirdly. The Ba'athist become ISIS is what I was trying to say. And they become, it's Saddam guys who become ISIS. And what happens is there's a rebranding. But it's the same influence. It's the same governmental leaders who become a part of ISIS. So the idea is that I was just hoping that Mark would acknowledge or say something to indicate that, okay, maybe these guys who are worse took their influence for Saddam Hussein. So anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would consider to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day. Thanks.